Okay, so for those of you who are new to the Women's Philanthropy Institute, my name is Jeannie Sager, and I have the privilege of leading our research to practice initiatives here at WPI. And at WPI, we conduct, curate, and disseminate rigorous research that we hope grows women's philanthropy. And so today's discussion is highly salient, given what the data demonstrates around the power and potential of women, wealth, and generosity. So the research shows that women are leading in three key predictors of philanthropy, and that is education, wealth, and income. Women are on track to control $110 trillion in accumulated assets by 2025. They are expected to inherit 70% of the wealth that will be passed down over the next two generations. And today, women control over 30% of global wealth. We also know that women are earning more than 50% of bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees worldwide, and more women are financially independent or the primary breadwinner in their families, and they're certainly the chief financial officers of their households. And the research shows that women are also more likely to give across all ages, races, and income levels. And given all of this, we are excited to host this dynamic conversation led by Lois Buntz. Lois is the author of Generosity and Gender, Philanthropic Models for Women Donors and Fund Development Professionals Who Support Them. This was published just last year. Lois is a consultant and highly successful fundraiser, having raised more than $125 million through United Way of East Central Iowa, and has a decades-long career in managing large-scale campaigns, teams, and volunteers. She's a prolific speaker on women's philanthropy, and we are so grateful for how she has amplified the research here at WPI in so many different ways. So I'd like to invite Lois to share with us more about her book and her insights around wealth and women and giving. Lois, welcome.
Great. Thanks, Jeannie, for that kind introduction and for the opportunity to talk with all of you today. My journey into women's philanthropy actually began probably 20 years ago.
Okay. Let's see what else they might have else.
About 20 years ago, when I initiated a women's giving program at United Way called Women United, which is part of a national giving society. And then after I left United Way in 2017, I decided foolishly maybe to write a book. It was a bigger endeavor than I anticipated. And I initially began by just gathering stories from women philanthropists about their lives, what were their motivations, what impacted them, what were the giving patterns, and of course, found quickly that I needed to do some more research. And thanks to the wonderful research studies published by WPI, I was able to supplement those stories with actual statistical research. And of course, reflecting on my own career as a fundraiser. As Jeannie mentioned, the numerous wealth reports that are out now have been published about the economic and demographic changes that are going on for women predict that women's wealth capacity will certainly increase and grow. I think the Rockefeller Foundation has done something around the whole concept of dual wealth transfer, that as women, we may inherit twice in our lifetime, once from our parents and again, potentially from a spouse or partner. And of course, more women are earning their livelihoods and in partnerships through marriages or other partnerships where they've acquired wealth. So the circle of women donors is definitely going to grow to be more diverse, younger, and potentially more of them will be earners of wealth versus inheritors. So as I was interviewing women on their philanthropic journey, and began to craft a chapter about assessing women as donors, I became very interested in what factors influence philanthropic decision making. And as Jeannie mentioned, age, income, and education are three of the primary ones. But there are others. So one of the first questions I started to ask women were, how did you learn about philanthropy? And as we've mentioned, everyone I talked to had a mentor, a model, someone who taught them about philanthropy. It may have been very informally by just observation, or it could have been very formally through direction that they got from someone. Fortunately, all of their experiences were generally very positive, and they learned about philanthropy by watching others. And now, of course, we have some studies like the Generosity Genes study that really talks about how parents influence their children in their giving, and particularly daughters are more influenced many times than sons are by their parents' giving. Secondly, I asked women a lot about their personal values and life experiences and how those impacted their philanthropic interests and choices. And as with any donor, these are major factors. What I found interesting is women who did not grow up with any wealth, who grew up in very modest households, and later in their adult life came into significant resources or assets, felt very responsible to give back. They really felt they had this wonderful opportunity, but also responsibility to give back to their communities and to the causes that they cared about. And thirdly, then I began to think about wealth acquisition as an important factor. And it's one that I think has not really been fully explored, at least in some of the research that I did. And I didn't define wealth very specifically. So this was not just high net worth women that I talked to. I talked to women who had a whole range of resources, some very modestly, some obviously quite large. And I purposely then started interviewing women in different categories, women who, first of all, had inherited their wealth. So these women, it was usually multi-generational, many times family wealth. And in the current trends of family philanthropy that we're talking a lot about now in the field of philanthropy, this is going to become even more important, I think, to understand. But for these women, it was kind of a constant state. They had always had access to resources, and they grew up having resources. And so it became a big question for them about, what do I do? You know, how will I use these resources? Some women, through observation, knew what they were going to do. Others didn't have a plan at all, and really were struggling with, how do I make decisions about philanthropy? Should I be philanthropic? And I think one of the questions is, as the next generation of these wealth and inheritors grow up, will they do the same things as their parents did? Will they continue legacies or create their own? Secondly, of course, I interviewed women who had acquired their wealth through a partnership. Many times this was a marriage. And some of these women contributed because they were wealth earners themselves, but others were not. They were just in this partnership that then they had assets because a spouse or a partner had earned them. And there are a lot of new studies now that are coming out about couples and how they make philanthropic decisions and how much women influence those philanthropic decisions, the different perceptions we see men and women have, or either of the partners, in terms of who has more power or more influence. And certainly women, I think, as they've been wealth contributors, feel like they have more influence. And then thirdly, obviously, I talked to women who had earned their wealth. Some of these women, again, were in partnerships specifically and contributors. but some of them were single women who had never been married, or maybe had been married and now were widowed or divorced. And they felt very empowered because they were the total owner of their resources and of their money. And so, they felt a lot of power about how can I use these resources to make philanthropic decisions. And we know single women may and many times give more than single men. And Jeannie's shaking her head again in one of your studies. So we know women are more philanthropic many times than men are, and are influenced by different factors. So acquisition of one's wealth certainly impacts one's attitude, and one's attitude will impact their philanthropic decisions. So there's a lot more to learn. In my book, I went beyond just the source of wealth and really talked about how women make some decisions, and also how fundraisers can use this information to engage more women donors, which of course we want them to do over time. So I think I'll turn it back to you now, Jeannie.
Thank you so much, Lois, and thanks for giving us some context around the topic and why we are so excited to have Susan and Alicia and Ondine with us today. So just want to do some quick introductions of our fabulous panel who are going to help illuminate this topic. So first we have Dr. Susan Blaustein. Susan is the founder and director of Women Strong International, which is a global nonprofit that finds, funds, strengthens, and shares, what great verbs, women-driven solutions that will transform lives in urban communities. And through collective learning and sharing, Women Strong is a global network of organizations advancing the rights and well-being of women and girls worldwide. She also co-founded and directed the Millennium Cities Initiative at the Earth Institute at Columbia University. She served as a senior consultant and analyst with the International Crisis Group based in Brussels and with the Coalition for International Justice based in Washington. She has been recognized by the Library of Congress, the National Endowment of the Arts, and Women's E-News recently chose Dr. Blaustein as one of the 21 leaders for the 21st century. So we are so thrilled to have her with us today. Also joining us is Dr. Alicia Makaye. She is the Chief Outreach Officer and former CEO of GXA, which is a Dallas-Fort Worth area IT solutions provider that helps other business take command and control of their IT. The A in GXA, Dr. Alicia Makaye co-founded the company with her spouse, George, in 2004. She's an award-winning entrepreneur, philanthropist, U.S. Air Force veteran, wife and mother of two, and actively advocates causes supporting children, families, and veterans across the globe. She has been recognized for her leadership by the Dallas Business Journal, UT Dallas, Women Leading Technology Sorority, and the Greater Dallas Hispanic Chamber. So thrilled to have you with us, Alicia. And last but never least, Ondine Sutajardi. She is a speaker, facilitator, and writer on next generation philanthropy who has dedicated her career toward advancing inclusive practices in philanthropic decision-making, governance, and advising, which is very close to WPI's heart and mission. As a director at 2164, which is a nonprofit serving next-gen and multi-generational families, she facilitates programs and conversations to equip next-gen donors with the tools to clarify their philanthropic identity and become more strategic in their giving, and also be prepared to serve on nonprofit boards. She also leads the 2164 Certified Advisors of Color program. Ondine comes to this work as a next-gen donor herself with a unique perspective for both funders and professionals in the field. Prior to joining 2164, she was with Women Moving Millions, and she also serves on the steering committee of the Asian Women Giving Circle and on the board of Asian American Futures. So welcome, Susan, Alicia, and Ondine, and Lois to the conversation. Lois will be joining our panel as well. So our first question is for all of you, and it's the question that Lois asked those that she interviewed in the book. How did you learn about philanthropy? So Susan, I'm going to start with you. How did you learn about philanthropy? How did you get engaged? What and who influenced you?
Well, thank you so much, Jeannie. And what a treat to be here with Ondine and Alicia and Lois and you and everyone here today. It's such an important conversation. My family's philanthropic tradition really started with my grandfather. His father was an immigrant peddler of coal oil from Eastern Europe. And by 1911, when the automobile was taking off, my grandfather, who was in high school, saw an opportunity, dropped out of high school with a buddy, and developed a clean, lead-free, what they called no-knock formula for gasoline. It's a long story. Lead-free, that was 1911. He grew this into Amoco oil, which eventually merged with Standard of Indiana. I've never had the chance to say that before to someone in Indiana University. And the rest is kind of history, but not for my grandfather. As an industrialist, he knew that he had clout, which he used as a policy advisor on a wide range of issues, and that he had the privilege of being able to give back. It's a Jewish thing, tikkun olam. It means repairing the world. My grandfather became and had always had been really a champion of human rights, but he had now the platform. And he was a statesman with Eleanor Roosevelt and a legendary judge. He co-wrote the UN Human Rights Charter and succeeded in pushing it past the Russian resistance at the San Francisco conference where the United Nations was established. So fast forward, and the importance of human rights, equal dignity and opportunity for every person. And the opportunity of philanthropy became deeply ingrained in my family and kind of became a family tradition that is now in its fourth generation, I'm delighted to say. For me, the opportunity given to me by inherited wealth, so one of Lois's categories, has been to make a difference where I've seen distinct and egregious inequality due to poverty, conflict, displacement, and racist, ethnic, and gender discrimination. It's been a very special opportunity where I really didn't need permission to act. The focus on now at Women Strong International on the intersection of gender and poverty, looping in some of those other issues, came very much as a result of my own experience and work. And I know we're going to get into that, so I can say more about that later.
Thank you, Susan. I love that. I didn't need permission to act. That's a strong statement, and we're gonna unpack that, I think, as we kind of continue our discussion today. But so thank you for sharing your story and how you came to learn about philanthropy. Alicia, the same question to you.
Thank you so much. And it's so great to join all the ladies. Lois, I will have to say, I did not know you were going to bring up Women United. I have a picture on my desk because I have been a part of that movement. So thank you for sharing that information. And so really for me, it really goes back to my family. As early on as my grandmother was alive during this civil rights movement. And many of you are very well aware of the African-American journey in our history. And when it comes to just being a part of a community that does not necessarily have access to resources, but you also have human rights that have been denied, then what happens inside of that community, the impact is there has to be a matriarch that stands up. And so that matriarch that stood up for those that were really less fortunate. And my grandmother, she didn't have a lot, but she still had the influence in the community and the impact to be able to give back at her level. And I didn't really know as to how much she was so involved until she passed away, because it was so many people that were really reliant upon her to really either give back her money as well as her time. And that led to my mother being a big giver of the community, and then it trickled on down to myself of being a big community giver. And then my community were wrapping their arms around me, giving back at a level that was just unbelievable, that I ended up with the academic endeavors that I can really stand and say the reason why I have a PhD today is because I had two women in the community that stood up for me and literally said, we're not going to stand and for this young girl who's really smart to not get any money, and we are not going to let money be the barrier for her not getting her education. And so when I watch my community around me really take a stance, not just for me, but watching those that didn't have a whole lot around me give back, their time as well as what resources they had, that then now influenced me to go above and beyond. And then, of course, my PhD is in public and nonprofit management. So I have a interest in this particular topic as well on the educational side as to what influences others to give back. And so I have really taken this and moved it into the technology world. And a lot of people have now, really thought our story was very unique because we're a couple that believes in giving back on a lot larger scale. And we created a company based off of we want to give back on a much larger scale. We found a problem that we can solve, and how can that problem impact our community and impact lives around us?
So we often say that our research here at WPI can really be grouped into three themes. Women give broadly, women give collectively, and women give holistically. And your entire story, Alicia, touches on all three of those themes. And so really excited to, continue this conversation and learn more together through the rest of this hour. So thank you, Alicia, for sharing your story. Ondine, knowing a little bit about you, I feel like there are some similar themes from what Alicia and Susan have shared, and would love for you to share with our audience more about how you learned about philanthropy and became so engaged.
Yes, well, thank you so much, Jeannie, and thank you just for the invitation to be here and to be in a room speaking with such esteemed leaders in philanthropy. I'm absolutely honored. But where I learned my philanthropy was really through the partnership of my grandfather and my grandmother from my mom's side in Indonesia, which is where I'm from. So my grandfather is a wealth creator on my mom's side of the family. He was one of the first doctors that graduated medical school in the 50s after Indonesia became independent from the Dutch and the Japanese colonization in 1945. And he helped to build the health infrastructure in our country, building up from the war. And he married my grandmother, who belongs to a matrilineal tribe, and one of the few existing matrilineal tribes in the world. This means that the wealth flows through the women's side of the family and not the man's side. My grandma used to always say, Opa, which is the name that I call my grandfather, Opa made the money. I spend it, give it, and invest it. That was my job. So through their partnership, I really saw the values of how trust and collaboration really come alive, especially in philanthropy. Given that my grandfather was an orphan, the conversations on what family means and how giving through the family is really important is central to our family values. And me, third generation, as my grandmother's only granddaughter, the responsibilities of wealth stewardship, equity within the family, resource allocation, managing those dynamics really starts with me. And these conversations I've been having with my family members since I was very young. So the values around obligation, around responsibility, on legacy, on what happens when Oma and Opa are not here in the world, they have passed on. And so when I moved to the US to go to college and started a career in philanthropy, I started meeting other next-gen inheritors along the way. And we've really created this, I would say we really wanted to create a network and a community where we can have these very nuanced conversations on what it means to be next-gen inheritors, to be women who have the power and the resources to not only uplift the communities that we champion, but also have these conversations so that other people feel empowered to do so as well. So that's a little bit of my story.
Thanks, Ondine. And I really appreciate you shining a spotlight on how so much of our research and so much of what we talk about in philanthropy is very Western based. And so really helping us understand that globally, in terms of the global majority, there are many cultures and communities where women are on lead, in all different kinds of ways, not just in philanthropy, but certainly on that wealth. So you sharing your story is really important for us, is an important reminder for us to think about where we are headed in terms of the data of where the future of philanthropy and giving is going, and certainly having this next gen voice, and you being so entrenched in these conversations is going to bring some great nuance to the conversation that we have today. So, Ondine, thank you so much. Lois, you're not off the hook. You asked this question of all those folks that you interviewed for your book, and so I'm going to ask you the same. How did you learn about philanthropy?
Well, certainly somewhat through my family. I grew up in I would say, extremely modest family. My parents, were pretty blue collar. And so their giving was very much through their volunteer work, I think through their service in the community. My mom, they were very active in their church. They were very active in the small rural community where we grew up. So it was really more by, I think, watching them and what they gave back, which wasn't necessarily monetary, but it was more from a service perspective. And then, through my career, obviously in nonprofits, I learned more about philanthropy. And my husband comes from more of a blue collar background also, but his parents were very generous in their communities. His father was very active in the union movement, back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And so we come to this from probably a very basic level. But as I learned about philanthropy and really got engaged in fundraising, I recognized kind of the power that there is. And so, over time, as obviously our resources grew, we were able to start giving back monetarily. And being involved in United Way, I got invited to everything, it seemed, in the community to give back. So I was kind of on the hook because I was asking other people for money. I had to give some myself, which I, gladly and graciously did. So, we have a very, I think, solid philanthropic plan now, my husband and I, in terms of making our charitable decisions every year and getting much more strategic about it over time also, rather than kind of spreading it wide a little bit. We're getting very targeted on the things that we want to support. And obviously I want to continue to engage and interest women everywhere to start giving more, because we have capacity, but we're not always asked.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. That's like textbook. One of
Right.
the big things I always say is that women are underasked. They're just not asked enough. Thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for talking about kind of where you are today and thinking about in terms of your philanthropy and the importance of a giving plan, and really kind of considering your values and how you would like to see your legacy. And so that leads really nicely to the first question that I'd like to ask of Ondine in particular, given her work as a philanthropic advisor at 2164, certainly your experience at Women Moving Millions. We know that having wealth and significant assets impacts individuals, and especially women, in many different ways. And we've heard that in just the stories that the four of you have shared. But I think from your perspective, Ondine, I'd love for you to maybe share with our audience, what does it mean to women to be able to have these resources and assets, from your perspective?
Thank you, Jeannie, for the question. I think it could mean a lot of things. We at 2164 have a module called Talking About Money, and how one of the things that I think a lot of people think is that money is a very taboo topic. And because because it represents power, represents control, it represents perception. And I think growing up with wealth, there was a perceived notion that the men were making decisions around the wealth. I've had a lot of nonprofits go to my brother to ask for money, and my brother would say, "Ask my sister," and they would say, "Why would I ask your sister?" Well, she is the one that's in charge. So I think I like to frame it differently, in a sense that it helps to expand the perception of who holds power and who holds wealth within the family system. And for professionals out there, the way that I like to think about this is that, no one makes, or very rarely do people make, and I don't want to say no one, very rarely do people make financial decisions in a silo. We make them in a system, whether it's a family system, a financial system with our advisors and our bankers. So whether it's a nonprofit foundation system with our board members and our executive directors. So for the professionals out there, this is a question around also like women being under asked, like going back to that. The question that I love for people to ask when they talk to donors or wealth holders is, who else helps makes these decisions with you? And that helps to uncover sort of the system that this person is a part of. And it helps you as a professional become more inclusive in the way that you talk about power, in the way that you talk about wealth and who holds that wealth and who participates in that wealth and decision-making around that wealth. So that's the question that I personally love asking is, who else do you do philanthropy with? Or who else make these decisions? Like, who do you go to for counsel? And it helps for me, especially because then I can talk about my family, and how much I love doing that also helps to build the trust between the donor and the professional advisor or the fundraiser.
I love that answer. So where the research kind of does a 1-2 punch with what you just shared, Ondine. So in Women Give 2021, we found that households tend to generally make giving decisions together. So 6 out of 10 households still make giving decisions together. But separately deciding households are on the rise. Mm-hmm. And then households where one person is making all of the decisions is also on the rise. And in those households, women tend to be on lead. So if you calculate all that together, for 80% of households, there is a woman involved in that decision-making process in some shape or some form. And so we have a lot of professionals who ask the question of us when we present this research, what do we ask? How do we incorporate that into our discovery, right? Into our interviews? And it's just that, Ondine, asking the question, who else is involved? And what we also know from the research around women like to give together is that they like to talk about their giving. So asking that question isn't intrusive to them. It is a natural question of curiosity. Who else is engaged? Who else should we talk to? Who else who might also want to join you in supporting this work? Those are all great questions, especially for what we know about how women prefer to give. And I love the framing of systems. I'm absolutely going to incorporate that into my talking points as well, Ondine. I think that's less scary for folks when you think about it as a systems approach. So thank you for that advice and sharing that experience. Alicia, the next question I have is for you, and it really is about wealth acquisition. You told your story. You have been an active participant in the success that you have today, and the opportunity to give back in ways that maybe your grandmother and your great grandmother and your mother might not have had to have. And so how did your wealth acquisition impact your decisions as you moved through your philanthropy journey, especially because you were so kind to share the other factors that kind of influenced your decision-making process in your philanthropy journey, whether it's your faith or your family? Alicia?
So I will definitely say that when it comes to giving back, my husband and I were in a very unique situation because we probably flipped the theory that it takes a lot of money to give a lot of money out We have what is called Earn Wealth. And so we build an IT organization. And so, however, we put our giving back ahead of the wealth, meaning that we were very intentional and strategic by saying what was going to drive the for-profit organization was the nonprofit mission. So that's something that may be very unique in the business world. So we didn't come from a perspective of we wanted to have an amazing organization because of the fact that we just wanted to grow all this wealth for ourselves. We intentionally said we want to give back on a much larger scale, and that was the mission and vision from the very beginning. And then once we started earning wealth, we were already involved in several different systems that were really designed, whether it be our church, whether it being on mission fields, our community work. We were already involved in those organizations, and as our earnings increased, our give back increased. So I wanted to make sure, and that may be a very unique model. I'm not sure if it has ever been looked at a much deeper level on a research aspect, but I will tell you, some people just have a very altruistic heart, and we had compassion for the community. So our compassion drove us in order to give back and earn more, because we wanted to give back more. And then organizations started finding us, because specifically we're in IT. Other nonprofits started to find us and said, how can we partner with your for-profit organization in order to, in our case, in a lot of instances, it's been through technology. How do we get technology? How do we advance technology in third world countries? And so we had some solutions for that. So it's kind of really been a situation where our compassion, our heart, our give back led to the for-profit organization. And we've always built that in the model of the organization. So now when I interview people, they always say, we really like your conscious capitalism or your social impact that you built as part of the organization.
Yeah, thank you for lifting that up, because it is, again, back to systems. We are one big ecosystem. And I was just at a conference just this week where one of the myths that the speaker was talking about that she wants to debunk is this idea that it's donors on one side and nonprofits on the other. That's not how this world works. We are all in this together, and in order to lift up communities, to your point, Alicia, it takes business and for-profit corporations working along with nonprofit organizations, working along with government organizations to make that happen. And so I think there is certainly a movement and how when you own your own business, you are able to kind of make personal decisions, right? That allow your business to demonstrate your personal values in ways that really help the community at large and certainly uplift issues and causes. So thank you for sharing that. And in particular, that conscious capitalism. I think you and I had a conversation about how corporate social responsibility, social impact, all of those things show up in different ways and in different language. And so it's really important to kind of understand what those terms are and how we're showing up in those terms. And so thank you again. Susan, my next question is for you. You've been at this for a while and have done some amazing things. How has your engagement in philanthropy changed over time? Have there been key kind of benchmarks that have made you lean in or maybe back off a bit and take a minute to think through things differently? Share a little bit about how maybe your engagement in philanthropy has evolved over time.
Well, thank you. And thank you too for everyone. The comments are so interesting and also provocative. They get me thinking. So I started as I began with my family, within my family, and there was a family foundation and then a number of family foundations, and the giving was joint. And the priorities and decisions were made, by the group. And that has continued. But as I have also evolved, my own giving has evolved. I was trained as a composer. My work was building my own little worlds. But once I got out in the main, the rest of the world, I just saw so much misery. I became a reporter. I reported across Southeast Asia on poverty and chronic poverty and post-conflict. And then I got involved in analyzing conflict at Crisis Group, as you mentioned, where the misery was amplified by virtue of the conflict. And then I got involved with international development as a means of finding solutions. Development is a solution, presumably, to poverty and to seeds of conflict. And then I saw in the Millennium Cities project that you mentioned that I led across the sub-Saharan region that the money wasn't coming through from the rich world to the poor world, from the private sector to the poor world, from the tops of governments to the bottoms of governments, from the mayors even to the poorest of the urban poor. This was the city's urban development project. But the women on the ground and the organizations that worked with them always knew what their communities needed in order to thrive. They simply lacked the technical and financial resources in order to get there. And so I love what you said, Jeannie and Alicia, about systems and about ecosystems in particular, because I think of cities as an ecosystem as well, and where everybody's got to be at the table. And the voices of those who know best are those who are living it, are those on the ground. And in the case of urban development or development in general, it's usually the women, right, who are keyed into their families, to their communities, who get together and talk about stuff and who know what is needed. And so when the project at Columbia, the Millennium Cities project, ended, we just decided we're going to flip the script. We're going to start by listening to the women, telling us what they need, and then bringing in the leveraging resources, university resources, private sector resources, philanthropic resources, government resources, in order to help them develop and test and refine and share those solutions. So what we do at Women Strong is to listen to them, to support them financially, to build their capacity in ways they say they need. So not all donors do that, to ask the grantees what their needs are, and then to bring them together in a learning lab so they can learn from and share with each other. We just had a fabulous retreat in Morocco where exactly that happened, with 14 partners in attendance from Philippines and Cambodia, my old haunts, to Guatemala and Salvador. It was quite remarkable, with 9 sub-Saharan partners in between. And we tried to do just that. And now that we're I am not in an exhaustible resource here. So we are trying to build a community of funders too, in this understanding that, and I think, Women Moving Millions, other funding networks have come to understand that it is an ecosystem where you have the resources, they may have the ideas, they may have the community connections, they may know exactly what's needed, and we got to put this together to change our world.
Absolutely. Again, women give collectively, and want to learn together, to feel confident about the impact that they're making. Susan, thanks so much for that. Lois, throwing this to you, given the work that you've done in the space and then the process of writing the book, can you share some examples of how you've seen wealth impact women differently than men?
Yeah, I think when when I interviewed women, a lot of times their primary objective was, how is this going to make my community better? How is this going to really have an impact? They wanted to understand the causes that they were investing in, which sometimes means takes them a little bit longer to make decisions, but they want to be very thorough about it, and very intentional about it. And they care a great deal, certainly about their families, first of all, but also about their community. They want to make their community better. And it was interesting. I interviewed a number of women who were very active in giving circles, which we know are extremely popular way of collective giving. And, they talked about, women aren't into competition as much. They don't care so much about maybe having their name on a building and recognition in some ways that may be more impactful for men. They just want to know that the work is getting done, that their money is being used, that it's being used effectively, that it's having an impact. So the recognition part really isn't, all that important to them. And I think as their wealth grows, they also begin to think more clearly about what kind of impact do I want to have. And we know high net worth women invest in women and girls more. Women in general, I think, invest in women and girls more, which is a good thing because the giving to women and girls is still extremely, extremely small, as we know. So, and it was interesting with the couples I talked to, a number of them, until they were married, if the husband had some wealth and they got married, the woman started influencing the philanthropic decisions. And in fact, it increased because of her influence, because she was encouraging more of it. And many times she was the one making the decisions behind the scenes, writing the checks. So, I think women really care about the impact in the end.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Lois. I'm cognizant about time, paying attention to that. So I want to just ask a couple questions that came through the chat before we do a last thoughts on this topic with the panel. So I think one of the questions I'm going to direct to Ondine and Lois, perhaps, because it is about the giving circle space. So women-only spaces like women's giving circles. Ondine is part of one. Lois is certainly interviewed, and certainly United Women is part of one. Is one. So I think all four of you might have something to say about this, but the question is, how can local philanthropic organizations and groups keep inclusivity in mind while still recognizing the importance of empowering local women? Do our panelists have experience or advice here?
And Ondine, want to take that? I'll just make a little comment about it. I think the giving circles have grown in popularity so much because it gives people an entry point. They can learn about philanthropy by giving a very modest amount. Women like to work collectively, as you said, Jeannie, so they learn from each other, and it's a very social experience for them. And women like to have that social element when they give. There are a number of identity affinity groups that have now developed. I know in New York City, there's an Asian women's giving circle that has become very successful. And, so they collectively pool their money and then give to causes that impact Asian women. And it might be arts and culture, it might be education, it might be a variety of things. So I think there are ways to be inclusive, both in terms of, broadening who we engage and how we engage them, and giving them the opportunity then to direct their giving to where they think it is most needed and most impactful.
I can just piggyback on that, Lois, a little bit, because as part of the Asian Women Giving Circle, and thank you for the highlight, it's true that, well, the first thing I'll say is inclusivity takes work. It doesn't mean that because we're engaging women in philanthropy, then it's inclusive. So even at the Asian Women Giving Circle, we try to really also think about, like, as our grant making pot increases and as the number of organizations that we are connected with increase, given our success, how do we better communicate with other communities that are in need within New York City about the work that we're doing? How do we lower the restrictions of grant applications? Like, what are the ways that we can help our constituents get access to the funds that we are able to allocate? So there is also, like, in terms of the word inclusivity, the types of conversations within our giving circle that we continue to talk about. What does it mean to engage Asian women? It's a continent. within a country. So these tough conversations we are able to have because we also have established trust with each other. As a circle, we can have these difficult and really intense conversations around inclusivity. I think that's the one other thing that I'll add. And I personally joined the Asian Women Giving Circle because I didn't have a lot of peers in New York City where I can talk about feminism, where I can talk about philanthropy, and where I can talk about my cultural identity. So really, I think it reflects back on the research that women do give collectively and with peers. And it also really helped me sort of clarify my identity as an Asian American woman in the US as well.
Yeah, thank you for that, Ondine and Lois. So again, mindful of time, I want to give each of you an opportunity to kind of provide kind of a last minute words of advice and certainly encouragement to share one last thought about women, wealth, and generosity. So, what words of encouragement would you share with those of us joining in today, whether they are coming at this as a practitioner in this space, as someone who works with donors and women philanthropists, or if they're coming at this as a philanthropist themselves, and where they want to lean in. So I'll give you a minute to think about that, and I'm gonna throw this to Susan first. What's some words of wisdom for the group?
Well, first of all, I loved hearing from Lois that women are more practical and that they're interested in the results. They're not so interested in their name on a plaque on the wall. And with that, I think comes that women are less interested in capital projects, I think, in general, than in human and social services. So, I mean, I would just say for those who are considering giving, for those who are new to giving, for those who are shy about giving, and for those who are advising, all those types of women givers, that this is an opportunity to be creative, that you know what's important to you. You know what needs to be fixed in our world. So zero in, find a way to support those who understand and who know how to address those issues. And then, just follow it up and take pride in all that they have been able to accomplish with your support and investment and your participation. And there's sort of, it's a tool. Right? Philanthropy is a tool, and there are problems out there that can use those resources, and so it's a match that needs to be made. And I think it's an opportunity to have fun with it, and you can be as quiet about it or as public about it as you like, but do it.
Thanks, Susan, and thanks for highlighting this being drawn to this partnership piece. It is they do want to build a relationship with these organizations and these causes that they support. Alicia, what about you? Words of wisdom.
Yes, and so I definitely want to encourage the women, if you are on the side of being involved in giving, I encourage you to keep giving. Keep doing what you're doing. But if you are on the side of fundraising, one of the key elements, because I did see a question that come in that says, how do we fundraise or get others to give back? I always want to encourage people, never judge a book by their cover. I am an IT business owner. I don't look like an IT business owner. And so people may make assertions or, about me because of the fact of how I look. And so you always have to be very inclusive in who you target. Make sure that you're looking at women that don't look like you. We all run in packs. That we run in big packs. And so I have children groups that I'm a part of, and we're looking for nonprofits to constantly give back so that we can teach the next generation. So that's just an example of, I am always on the lookout for organizations that are making a difference in the community. Then if you're in a practitioner that's discussing this topic, I invite you to invite all women to the table. Different women's, like, once again, that just do not look like you. Invite them to your conversation and to your table. That's how we begin to make a much larger impact, is when we all open the doors and don't just hang around in people that have all general commonalities as you do. Invite someone else to the table that has either a different business, a different idea, so that we can continue giving back and building bridges for the next generation.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope you were seeing the chat blow up in support of everything that you just shared, Alicia. You really brought it home. Um, Honestly, we just have to invite more people to the table. And when we look at what the data shows, if we're not inviting more women and more donors of color, then it's at our peril. We are a full ecosystem. We are a full community. If you want to be inclusive. And really think through how you're doing that. Ondine, words of wisdom.
Oh my gosh, how do I top Alicia and Susan? First of all, I plus one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10 to everything that the both of them have shared. I mean, I do believe, like, speaking as an inheritor and as a millennial and as a next gen, I would say for the practitioners, it's really easy, I think, to see us as just the child of X. And I think that the more that we're able to see individuals as their full humans, as part of a bigger system, as part of a family history, as part of the other roles that we play as a sister, as a mother, as a friend, the more that we're able to build trust, and have just more frank conversations around what do we need in order for our communities to thrive. So I think that's the one thing I'll share.
Thank you so much for that, Ondine. And yes, it is. I always talk about networking and net weaving for women. Women are natural net weavers. Don't ever underestimate the power of your voice, and don't ever underestimate who the women donors that you're working with are talking to and who they're influencing. So very important. Lois, you get the last word.
Well, I guess the only thing I would say, and thank you all for participating. It was wonderful to meet you. I wish I had interviewed all of you for the book. If you are a woman thinking about giving, I would say write a mission statement. Write down what you want to accomplish, and think about what you care about the most and what you're most concerned or worried about. And that many times drives you to what it is that I want to change with your philanthropy. And for fundraisers, please just reach out to women more. We don't have enough programs in all the sectors of nonprofit who are reaching out to women. So you're missing a huge opportunity if you don't ask us.
Thank you. I can't think of a better way to end except going all the way back to the very beginning and reminding all of you to give yourself permission to act. You don't need permission, so give it to yourself, I guess is what I want to say. Give yourself permission to act, stand in your philanthropy as agency, and thank you for joining us today. Thanks again, Lois and Ondine and Susan and Alicia, for your insights and your expertise and your wisdom and your joy. Truly grateful.
Thank you all so much, Jeannie. What a joy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.